The story.
Bruce had seen in a vision a picture of a shop in Broome, and he described it to me. And when we got there, we found that shop. And 2 years later, that shop ended up being ours. We were able to get hold of it, and it turned it into a travel agency. And then we've relocated it now back to Kununurra in the Kimberley, and we're running it again ourselves.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colefax. Welcome to The Story. Well, Bruce and Terri Connell are some of the busiest people you'll ever meet. In addition to being the directors of the Kimberly Cruise Centre, they're also the pastors of King's Church in Kununurra, Western Australia. We'll hear their story today and find out what it's like to live and minister in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Bruce and Terri are having a chat with Shelley Scowen.
You guys are all about travel, helping people have a great experience when they come to visit the beautiful Kimberley region of Western Australia. What do you love about the whole region where you live?
Well, Shelley, first of all, g'day. And what we've found over the years is that there's a lot of people who've heard about the Kimberley and want to see something new and fresh and different. Do you know much about the Kimberley?
I must admit I don't. I've actually never been to Western Australia, so that is how uneducated I am on all of this.
No, that's okay. There's a lot of people the same. We're a long way from anywhere.
Yeah. Definitely on my bucket list. Don't get me wrong. I'll be going to Western Australia before I go overseas, but just not in the stage of life at the moment.
Our closest biggest shopping centre is Katherine, and that's 500 kilometres. But if we want to go a bit more serious, we go to Darwin, and that's 850 k's. So,
wow.
But that's actually closer than the other side of the Kimberley. So we're in the East Kimberley in Kununurra, and we're right next to the Northern Territory border. And the other side of the Kimberley is Broome, and that's about 1,050 kilometres away. So, and it's the biggest town in the Kimberley. So it's the West Kimberley. It's the gateway to the West Kimberley. We're in the gateway to the East Kimberley. Mm-hmm. And in that 1,000 kilometres, which is 421,000 square kilometres, there are about 40,000 people. So it's one of the most sparsely populated areas on earth.
And hence why there aren't a whole lot of shopping centres.
Yeah, that's like that, yeah. Yeah, I think most of the locals actually head to Perth. And that's 2,500 kilometres.
Are you talking literally like to go and buy new clothes, you're travelling thousands of kilometres?
That's right, exactly.
Wow.
There is a Target. We do have Target in town now.
Yeah. Wow, that must have been a pretty big development.
Yeah, no, it's really good actually. Well used by the locals.
I got to say, that's one thing I enjoy about living in the city. 15 minutes and I'm at a big shopping centre. 5 minutes and I'm at a small shopping centre. So that's pretty great. But we don't have, there's obviously a whole lot of beautiful things that you've got there that I don't have here in my little suburb as well.
Yeah, well, that's one of the beauties up here. We've as you said before, we've been involved in the travel industry for, I think, 17 or 18 years up here now. And we started off with a small travel agency in Broome, and it sort of grew into 3 or 4 different directions, which was local tours, then Kimberley tours, and we were also doing domestic and international travel in the old days. But we've come back to now we're just doing the Kimberley cruises. So we just focus on the coastline. I mean, we still do some inland in four-wheel drive safari sort of things. In fact, our son's taken over the safari business we set up a few years ago, and he's out there doing the touring side. But on the coastal side of things, there's about a dozen boats that do between Broome and Darwin, and there's about 2,500 kilometres of coastline around the edge of the Kimberley. And in that whole section, there's all sorts of magnificent scenery. We've got some massive, 80-metre cliffs with waterfalls, and depending on the season, because not knowing anything about the Kimberley, the season up here runs from March, which is the end of the wet season, through until about September, October, and theoretically from March till October, we've had just about no rain. So that's when people come, and our weather up here in, say, May through till July, August even, is just absolutely perfect. We're probably 15 degrees overnight, 15 to 18 degrees overnight, and 27 to 30 degrees during the day.
Nice.
That's the middle of your winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's pretty
we
good.
don't actually have a winter. We got rid of all our jumpers about 10 years ago, or probably 15 years ago. We only kept one in case we go south during the dry season, and then then it freeze.
Are the waterfalls better just after wet season, like in the early part of the season?
Definitely.
Yeah,
that's we sort of call that the waterfall season, and that's become very popular now. Probably May is the first time to book out in the Kimberley. Like it was traditionally people always came in June, July, August, and then as the more and more photos got circulated, there was the big waterfall something. Next thing, May became really popular, and even April now. It's right on the end of that really hot, wet season, but it's when the fishing's the best, because we've got great fishing up here, and all the barramundi and that sort of sports fishing, as well as lots of good table fish. And then and the waterfalls are pumping, so at May time it's become really popular.
Wow. I mean, there's so much going for the region. Is there a reason why it's not more densely populated? Is it just the fact that it is fairly remote? Like, what's the story?
I think that's the biggest thing, like the fact that we're just so far, and it's like even now we've been here 20 years, and still when we go to visit family, it's a big trip. It's like, I mean, this is home for us now, but it's when we go over east and see our parents, that sort of thing, Christmas, whatever, and it's a big mission.
I'm sure.
And for a lot of people, that isolation really is the barrier. It's too much. So a lot of people come for a short time and have a look and enjoy it, and then just say, I couldn't, nice place to visit, I couldn't live here.
Yeah.
I suppose the other side of that is the extremities of, like, it's just starting to get warm. It's 42 most days at the moment, 38 to 42, and then it just gets hotter from now.
Yeah, so you got to be able to hack the climate then.
Yeah, definitely. And by the time you get to December, you've had a couple of months of pretty much mid-40s a lot of the time.
Oh.
So it's it's pretty tough if you're working outside, that's for sure.
Yeah, you want to hope your air conditioner doesn't break down as well.
Air-conditioned house to your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned office, and then off to the air-conditioned shopping centre. I often take my hats off to the pioneers.
Yes.
They do the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys just love getting out and seeing God's creation, and I guess directing other people as well. You help people plan their holidays to get out and see God's creation. What a great way to spend your time. I guess basically just appreciating the beauty that God has put around us.
It's amazing up here, Shelley. We're in the middle of, we've got just a magnificent place here. We're in a little property called Eden, and it's a real good reminder to us of how it all began. In the beginning, God. It doesn't matter where you go up here, because there's just so many stunning, isolated, beautiful areas, and crowds seem to be the last bit of our problems. Like, I mean, with our business, especially out on the coast, the boats, people are worried because there's a dozen boats out there now that they might actually see another boat on the same day. But,
how terrible.
That's pretty tough. But on the inland, I mean, it's become very popular for the four-wheel drivers to go through along the Gibb River Road, and places like El Puestro and Home Valley have become bigger now, Lake Argyle, but even still a big crowd would be a couple of hundred people. That'd be really, you'd be looking for somewhere else to go.
Mm. So what made you start this business in the first place?
I'll pass over to Terri for that one. She's the travel agent.
All right.
I was happy gardening.
Shelley, when we were first in Broome, like Bruce said, we were happy gardening. He was happy gardening, and I had a travel agency licence from years earlier, and there was one day when God said, don't give up your licence, and we thought we were just going over there with ministry and church planting, but when we arrived in Broome, we discovered that God in fact wanted us to also work full-time in jobs there as well. And so within 2 weeks of arriving in Broome, this is back in 1996, I went and worked for a local travel agency. And before we'd been there, we went on a prayer mission before moving to Broome, and Bruce had seen in a vision a picture of a shop in Broome, and he described it to me. And when we got there, we found that shop, and it was a closed shop at the time. We wondered, well, what was the big fuss that God was showing this to Bruce? And beforehand, and 2 years later, that shop ended up being ours. We were able to get hold of it, and it turned it into a travel agency for local and international travel. And
Wow.
so that's how we sort of moved into the business, and at the same time we were running a church. We did the same, we took all that with us when we moved up to Kununurra and brought our travel agency business with us after it spent a time in Sydney for several years being run by our daughter. And then we've relocated it now back to Kununurra in the Kimberley, and we're running it again ourselves.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Shelley Scowen is chatting with Bruce and Terri Connell, the directors of Kimberly Cruise Centre and also the pastors of King's Church in Kununurra, Western Australia. We'll find out more of their story and more about the beautiful Kimberley region when we return.
The Story.